Okay, so this video won't probably be going out, but we are essentially, I would think, spiritual beings. Now, when I say I would think, I always say we are spiritual beings. But when I say I would think, I mean that in the sense that I was not spiritual not long ago, or at least I was, but I didn't know I was. So I'm saying that that is really the essence of a human being at a very bottom level. I would think, it's the essence, it's the bottom line of it, and 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 because of that, we're in, a physical body while we're uh, in this earth, video game playground type world that may or may not, be as we think it is. The reality of it is probably not what it appears to be. So we appear to be physical only in a physical only world, and our thought seems to have nothing to do with the physical world, whereas it's closer to the truth when you say you're a spiritual being in a physical body, but your thinking creates the physical reality or contributes to it because you're really a spiritual human being. And so the reality, is created by you indirectly, not directly, whereas perhaps it should be directly if we were conscious of it and if we were in a more natural, different type of reality. So I'm just going to make it up, okay, from here on, because like I do, it's all fairy tales, but I do think that the basic things that I say at the start, the spiritual human being, the thinking plus feeling and emotion, which is like a vibration, because everything in the reality is affected by a vibration and frequency, even though I, like probably most people, do not understand or know anything about it. I believe these things because I see the results of them, not because I believe in them or because I think they're theories, okay? I believe in them because I don't understand them, but I see the results of them. I see the physical results of them, which is like as real as you can get in this essentially unreal reality in a way, because it's certainly not as we think it is. But, most of my conclusions still come from a basis of this world being a reality, a real world. Even though it's not. But of course you do have to then say yes, you do have to accept certain basic facts, shall we say, almost, or what you think is real, or what you think makes up this unreality even, because whatever it is, it's still real. It's just that we don't understand it. What we think is real is just that we don't understand. We're not told, and we're not allowed to discover for ourselves, I would say. That's my own conclusion, is that we should all know it ourselves. We would just discover it for ourselves if we were at a high frequency and if we were in an environment that was conducive to that. Whereas in reality, we're at low frequency and we're in an environment that is not conducive to us being aware, shall we say, that word aware. Many have said that we are infinite awareness. This was from a very famous philosopher, if you like, of the Matrix. And I say that with all due respect, but if you are famous, if you make money, if you are successful in this world in any way, you are of the Matrix. You are the product of the Matrix. You are bought and sold by the Matrix, more or less. And I'll get into that in a song, because I like to use the fairy tales and the songs and the nursery rhymes and the fables as examples, because they are as real, as far as I can see, as anything else. So yes, and that is because you will get truth. You will get more truth, from the Matrix, even though the Matrix is a construct to keep you in the dark, which is strange. But that is because the Matrix has to be one step ahead of all real humans. So the Matrix has to have its own disciples in place that are of the Matrix, in case a real human raises the vibration and becomes more aware of the reality. Because it has to be a scientist of the Matrix. It has to be a philosopher or a guru of the Matrix. It can't be a real human that will be a spokesperson for this world or for the Matrix. The Matrix has its own. The Matrix is a closed system. The Matrix is a construct designed to keep the human mind and the human vibration and the human feelings, emotions and thinking at a low level, to keep this matrix going, because it's a low frequency, low level matrix. Where humans are placed in it and are forced to operate at the lowest capacity that they're capable of. I'm not putting this very well. They're forced to operate at their lowest capacity. They're not allowed or permitted or are given circumstances to operate at full capacity. Because then the matrix doesn't exist. Then it becomes a human reality. And this is not a human reality that humans are placed into. This is a matrix reality. This is an artificial reality in every way. But it doesn't matter what it consists of, and I'm not scientific or brilliant enough to state clearly what that is. It would be nice to know, to understand it, sure. Because then you also will grasp the reality, what is real and what you're here for, and what the whole thing is around you. It would be nice, but I didn't even understand the scientific analysis of our natural world, or of the world that I thought it was. Even though you're educated a certain way to believe certain things, but I didn't really ever delve into even that. So I certainly am finding it rather hard to delve into a reality where you have no real knowledge at all, and are not given any real knowledge, and are kept at a low capacity, to where, yes, that infinite awareness that the matrix gurus, philosophers, teachers, disciples speak of, shall we say. I'm not sure if they actually fully comprehend what they're saying, or whether they are just spokes vehicles for the matrix, or whether they are like a human being, because everything is a duplicate of a human being in the matrix. but not everything in the matrix is a genuine, real, high-frequency human being. Most are disciples and projectors of the matrix. They believe in the matrix. They work for the matrix. They are rewarded by the matrix. They represent the matrix, but the matrix is a false reality. So they're representing a false reality, and they're representing, sometimes they even represent a kind of idealized version of what humans would think. Most of the time it comes from human thought, it comes from the human mind, but it is given to the matrix. The matrix, as I say, uses its own to then project that back out. That way I follow the matrix and its disciples, instead of searching out for the few real human beings that are probably at low frequency and don't know what is going on, like myself. But, and that's why I say we're spiritual beings, because I would think that that is why we are in this situation. I have said that I think that there is a kind of limbo thing going on, even though I don't really know what limbo is, but limbo is an intermediate state between worlds, you could say, really. It was quite common when I was like a child, even though I was not of that particular denomination, but I knew of it through others, that there was a place called limbo, that certain denominations, in fact the most prominent denomination in the entire world at that time, believed in limbo, if they studied and were of their religion correctly. It was their gospel, you could say. And I always thought that was strange, because there were probably two prominent religions in my youth. But of course we've had other denominations over the world too, but if you're living in a limited area, you're only aware of the two main religions. But the two main religions were essentially the same. They were the same even then, except that they had slightly different ways of worshipping, slightly different what they placed importance on in that religion, but essentially they still believed in the same God and the same story, if you want to look at it that way, or the same fairy tale if you think that it's not real. I'm just going to take every story and say it's a story, it's a fairy tale or whatever. I just find it interesting. It is part of our reality. Whether you believe it or not, it's part of our reality, because if you, like I've said before, you can be like myself, not of a denomination, but you're still aware that 3/4 of the world is of a denomination, so it still affects your reality and it's still around you. And it may even be affecting your reality a lot more than what you're aware of, as I now am conscious of. Because even if you don't believe things yourself or are unaware of even denominations around you, it's like this reality we live in. This whole world, everything is like, just because you don't follow something yourself and you're not aware of it, and we're not aware of 99% of our reality, really, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Of course, we know that. That's like, without me sounding fancy here. And that's just I say this, I don't mean to say it like as though I know what that 99% is, because I don't. But, I am aware now that even in my own little reality, because I only live in a little area, shall we say, of the big world, but even in that, there are things going on around me, locally, you could almost say, that you're not aware of. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know what's going on inside every house. They might know what's going on inside yours, but you don't know what's going on inside them. You don't know who or what people are worshipping. You don't know how they're thinking. You don't know that. But like I say, I think that myself, I would now say that regardless of that, you can see the results of things. You can see people's actions. You can see how the reality changes in a physical way. So you don't have to be clever to figure anything out. You just say, this has changed. People have changed. Their way of doing things has changed. And if like I've said before, if the matrix exposes itself more, at a conscious level, for me, the matrix exposes itself more. This is because times have changed. This is because the matrix wants to keep the frequency at a certain level, and because human beings are the center. Yes, like the other video, the center of the matrix, in the sense. We're not the center of this earth, like I'm not the center of this earth in any physical reality, no. Because, you would look around and say, hey, I appear to have no control over the reality is controlling me. What I think, do and say doesn't appear to have direct influence or direct input. But, but that is not the reality of the matrix, because the matrix is overseen by a being, a God entity, that knows that it's all about frequency and vibration, and knows that this reality operates that way, and that humans are the center source of that. So although we are like the matrix disciple philosophers, whatever word you want to use on people that will speak about the reality, but I mean like people that are doing it successfully on a reasonable scale, not just like me making a video to a few people. Those people are not the human beings that are the center of the matrix. They are the matrix interpreters of reality for the real human beings. They are there to make sure that you stay in the matrix, and that your mind stays in the matrix, and that you worship the matrix, and that you follow the matrix. Because as human beings, yes, are awareness, or should be awareness. We should be awareness. I should be a lot more aware of this reality than what I am. But even my minuscule awareness frightens the matrix, because the matrix doesn't want any awareness on part of real human beings that are the cog or the center, the life force of the matrix. Because, they might decide that they don't want to be the cog anymore. They might separate their mind from the matrix, mind control earth, and if they become aware and can raise the frequency, whether consciously or unconsciously, because I was doing it unconsciously. I only became aware of the matrix at a conscious level because the matrix decided to close down the acceleration of the frequency. Otherwise, I would still be in the dark, in the matrix, and probably actually are living a little bit better. But, that is because, like I say, I do think the matrix does hang by a bit of a thread. Only on that awareness myself, that reality awareness, because that's not like, as I say, that's not like where you have your gurus and your philosophers and people that somehow get all this knowledge of the universe or whatever in the world and everything around them, because, that they will be speaking and projecting quite truthful reality in a way. But they are of the matrix. And then, instead of realizing that, because it's interesting, I find this interesting, but it's a bit like, I'm not sure if I can explain this very well. I probably won't be able to. But it's kind of like this. If, it's, you'll either experience this yourself or you won't. But it's kind of like if you listen to a preacher, or if you listen to a minister, or even if you listen to me. But actually that's probably not the case in listening to me, because the people that listen to me already know most of them. But it's like you can listen, like this is, like if you listen to a philosopher, shouldn't really be of a denomination. But if you follow the philosopher, then that's a denomination. See, if I make a video right now, I'll use myself as an example. Assuming I was a preacher or a minister or a philosopher, they talk about the same things. They talk about reality and kind of giving you some sort of realization to where you are able to live better and able to deal with reality and somehow progress in this world, all this sort of stuff. This is what they call self-empowerment, all that sort of stuff. I make this video, and I'm making it for the people out there, supposing I had a lot more viewers and a lot more followers, shall I say? Followers, see, that's the word. Followers. There shouldn't be followers. Shouldn't be followers. It should just be that I'm giving you a message about my reality, about what I think is reality, fairy tales, whatever you want. But it should never be that you follow me. Whereas that is the intention of the matrix. If you are not of the matrix denominations, if you are not of the worldly things of the matrix, whatever they be, whatever beliefs you have, whatever ideas, if you don't follow the matrix God and its constructs of the matrix, shall we say, because everything is of the matrix. The matrix now has full power, 100%. There is no room for anything else. It's not like there's a choice. It's not like there's sections of this world that are different or whatever. The matrix is a full construct for every person. It's just that each person's reality will be maneuvered by the matrix or played by the matrix differently for different reasons. And basically it will probably come down to, I would say, based on my own observation really of reality, of the physical world, even if you like, even though it's still fantasy in a way, because if a lot of what you see is really constructed and all acted and played, it's really something that a sensible, wise human being should ignore, really, because it's not meant for them, for their advancement. Like it's like you're in a movie, but you're unaware that you're playing in a movie. Whereas if you're paid, like by the Matrix, to make a movie and be in a movie, that is real. That is the Matrix. But the rest of us are unpaid actors in a movie that we're unaware of, because we're the humans, you see. And the humans are not the disciples or the chosen ones of the Matrix. They are merely the utilised source of vibration and frequency that keeps the Matrix going. And the reason for that is because we're spiritual human beings. It has to be. See, to me, that's like a logical conclusion. Because otherwise, why are we put into this limbo kind of Matrix world? There's no other explanation for it. That's how I come to that conclusion, because I wasn't a spiritual human being. I was a human being, but I wasn't spiritual. I didn't think there was anything. I didn't think I was in a matrix. I didn't think even in the real world that there was any spiritual context. I didn't actually know, of course. I would have admitted that I just didn't understand anything at all. And basically I said, I don't understand anything and I don't care. I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm just going to try to live as pleasant a life as what I can. But sometimes in trying to live a pleasant life as you can, you could still be indirectly doing spiritual things that play havoc with this frequency controlled matrix, because the human frequency affects the matrix, the world, the earth. This closed in matrix earth. It's all governed by technology, which is a frequency, which we have no control over. We have our own frequency, but we are allowed free rein in it at a frequency level only. Our frequency and free will are left. Why? You'll have to ask yourself that. That's what I had to do. Because everything else is under the control of the matrix. In fact, you don't really have free will. You really only have mind free will, but you don't have physical free will. You don't even have mental free will, really, but you do have a kind of spiritual free will. I don't think that made any sense, actually. I didn't put that well. I'll have to think that one a bit better. Oh, dear. I guess I'm trying to fathom it. Yes, you really do still have your mind, but your mind is influenced by the matrix. It's like if I go to buy some groceries, right? Which I go and buy some groceries. Try to use an example. Keep on track. Tell me to keep on track, please. I go to buy some groceries. When I go to the grocery store, I have a huge matrix display of items to buy from. Huge display of items, foodstuffs, toiletries, whatever. The things you buy when you go to the supermarket, right? Huge amount of exorbitant amount of choice these days. And some will entice you by being delicious. Some will entice you by being natural even. Healthy, organic, all these sorts of things. And some will just, but they will all be there. There will be choice. You will have a matrix choice, but it will only be a matrix choice, because you will only be able to buy what is there in the matrix supermarket. And then you will have, then the mind game will be played with you. because you will have the choices of the matrix. You know, maybe in that supermarket there might be, you know, 1,000,000 items, and there actually are more than that probably in a big supermarket, much more than that. But in amongst those million choices of those foodstuffs even, or toiletries, right, there will be only a few that will probably be conducive to your spiritual benefit, or to where, you know, you will be able to raise the frequency. This is a ridiculous example that I'm using, and I'm getting frustrated and angry at myself. So the matrix has the upper hand again, even in the video. But because you see, but are you kind of getting what I'm trying to say here? That everything is the matrix. But because we are spiritual human beings, we are in a kind of what I would now call a limbo, where you're still given some choice, because you have to be given a little bit of choice because you're a spiritual human being, despite the reality that you're in a controlled matrix where you really have very little free choice. Because you do have free choice, but you are so entrenched in the matrix. The matrix is all around. The matrix makes you, yes, like the eye of the tiger in the previous video, fight for your survival. It puts you into a certain mindset. So your free will, your mind, is not really, you're playing in the matrix. So even at a free mind level, you are at a disadvantage. We all are. And it's only when you can see that negativity, or if it's revealed to you, because eventually I suppose people will be aware of it. It will probably be revealed to everyone at some point. I would dare to say that if it is revealed to you, that the matrix probably still has the upper hand, and in fact, like myself, more than has the upper hand, because I don't think the matrix likes to reveal all its strategies and all its workings unless it has full control, because otherwise it would be like revealing what it is going to do before it does it, and then it loses its upper hand. So I would imagine that the matrix mainly reveals itself. I would think it mainly reveals itself when it realizes that your free will, although you have it, is not going to be as much benefit as what it should be. And you will find it very tough not to play in the matrix, I would think. But I would also say that sometimes, possibly, and I'm only surmising this because of reality, so I have to say I see this reality, and so I have to say why does the matrix expose itself to some and then remain quite covert to others? Why does it hide in the shadows and play hide and seek with a lot of people, and yet openly show itself to others? Well, I would think, like I say, there would be the matrix would know each real human being. They would know the cog of the matrix that perhaps might upset the cart a bit, shall we say, or might not be running the matrix as smooth as possible. They know they can. It's a bit like having, I would imagine that the matrix God would be a bit like someone that has, would it be an infrared camera or an infrared device? I don't understand these things, but I've seen it on the TV, okay? In other words, to where you can see a bit more by a device than what you can see with the naked eye. The human being only sees with the naked eye. And we're meant to be able to have a broader spectrum of what we can see. We're meant to be able to see the other world or the other reality or the workings behind the scene. We're meant to be able to, pull the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz, pull the curtain and see how the Matrix works. We're meant to be able to do that. We're meant to be able to see its workings. And once you see its workings, then it can't play you as much, which is common sense, isn't it? Yes. You're only played while you think the Matrix is real, and while you can't do anything but play because you don't know how it works. So you can't actually counter the Matrix in a way. It's a bit like me, like I know it's there. I know it's games, but it's still all I can see in my reality. I can't use any other abilities or I can't use like my eyes as an infrared kind of camera to where I can see other things in the reality. I know they're there, but I really can't see them. So they can only play me. I can't play them. I can't counter them. In fact, you'd say, well, how do you know they're there? Well, I know they're there because I see the results. I see the physical results. And so I say, these things are physical results, even though they are coming from a source that I can't see. But I can see the physical results. You don't have to know there's a Matrix God to see that there's a negative world or a negative reality, or that people are negative, or that the world is changing and that it's negative. But if you don't ask why, and you just think it's all random and it's just bad luck and that everyone's just got confused, well, then you play with the Matrix, you see. Whereas the minute you say, no, nothing is random, the minute you do that, when you come to that realization, which once you see the way that the Matrix is operating like a machine, that everything seems to be programmed, that even people act in an unnatural way. It's a bit like, supposing I'll put it at a very practical level, like if I see a group of people on the street, right? I see a group of human beings on the street, and they are all in a group, but they're all using mobile phones. They're not talking to one another, they're talking to mobile phones, or they're looking at mobile phones, just like I'm talking into one now. Most people think that is natural and normal. I look at it and say, no, it is not. And I say, what are they doing on those mobile phones? Are they connected by those mobile phones? Because their actions then seem to indicate that the mobile phone is directing them. And who is directing the mobile phone? The Matrix, the Archon Matrix God, entity, being, source of this Matrix, not source of a human being, but source of the Matrix, controller of the Matrix. That was the wrong word. The human really is the source of the Matrix, but the source of control is the Matrix God. The power of the Matrix is in the source Matrix God. The power of the Matrix is in that system. But there is also the human being that is the centre source also. I'm not putting this very well. It sounds convoluted, and it kind of is. But that's only because I don't put it properly. Because I'm not putting the story well, or the reality well, if you think it is. I may not send this video out. But yeah, I would say that you see the results of the Matrix. You see humans acting not natural. You see them acting in a program kind of way. Almost, I've said that word synchronicity. Almost as though they're synchronized. Is that the right word? Oh, it's not the right word either. Almost as though they're not acting randomly. They're in conjunction with other human beings, whether it be by a mobile or whatever means. I mean, it's a matrix, so they could be influenced by many other things. But they're not individuals randomly walking around anymore. That is just what I see as a reality. And even if I didn't think they were combined using the mobiles to communicate for whatever purpose, because see, technology in itself is a negative thing. I would say, I'm going to emphasise this once again, but this is just my own personal view on things. But I will still say this. Even technology is still only as negative as a bit like behind the steering wheel of a car. Like the fella in Jewel. The movie Jewel, which I think I mentioned before, where the real human being is just travelling in his car home, and he is confronted and stalked and harassed and threatened by a large truck, by a truck driver who we would take to be a psychopath, but we never see him, we never hear him speak, so we have no idea of his personality, but his actions. The truck, he is the driver of the big, huge truck that is used as a weapon against this real human being, just going home going home in his car. And he knows that he's not going to make it home alive because this truck is going to push him off the road and basically driving him, threatening him at a psychological level before even doing so. Now, you'd have to see the movie Jewel. It's a simple movie, but I've said before, and in case I didn't say it in the other video, I saw it a few months ago. I had seen it years and years ago. Naturally now I see it at a slightly different level. Not a lot, because it's a very simple movie, which I like things simple. I think this world is so convoluted. If you don't keep it simple, the Matrix then just confuses you more. In fact, even if you don't know all the truth, sometimes you get more knowledge and it just adds to the confusion, which it really does. So you do have to... sometimes I think if you come from, that's why I say you try to come from what you think is a simple truth kind of bottom line place, and everything else flows from that. Because if you don't, that's why I say if you say you're a spiritual human being, that grounds you in that reality to say, well, everything else then is the cause. Everything else that happens is because of that. If you follow me. If you weren't a spiritual human being, I wouldn't be seeing the Matrix. And the Matrix wouldn't matter. It wouldn't worry me. It wouldn't matter anyway. I'd probably say, I like the Matrix. I'm not a spiritual human being. I like this technological fake world. I enjoy playing in it. It's a little bit dangerous at times, but hey, I like a bit of excitement because I get too bored otherwise, because I'm not a spiritual human being and I really can't entertain myself. I must get on the mobile and be in contact with another mobile user. I must operate for the Matrix. I must play in the Matrix. I must be part of the Matrix. I must be, because the Matrix is all about connections. It's just like a connection of technology. This is why I don't endorse technology. And that's why I say it's all negative. And I went off that track and went on to another 1,000 tracks, as I always do, which must be terribly annoying for you that listen. And now I've lost my train of thought. But as usual, I was just going to emphasise the negativity of technology, that it has no benefit But I was just going to say that it is still only as dangerous to some extent of the human user, or a user that is of the matrix even. In other words, if you don't, because I'm going to say that human beings are spiritual beings. So if you're not a spiritual being, you're not a human being, okay? That's what I'm going to say. That keeps it simple. It may not be the whole truth, because I know there are variances, and I know that many people get possessed, taken over. So they're human beings that become taken over. And at what point when you become possessed do you cease to be a spiritual being or a spiritual human being? You know, a thought just come to me just then. Is there a difference between, if it's really all a spirit kind of world, even though it appears to be all the physical matrix world, are the negative ones spirits too, but just negative, anti-life, anti-human being spirits? Well, that's another question. I would probably, and I don't understand these things, and I just made that up, so take it as fairyland as it is. But well, all I can really say is that in this reality, the human appears to be the centre, so therefore all the other beings, if they cease to be, are or are not a spiritual human being, they are merely players for the matrix then, so it probably doesn't overly matter. There would be, yes, there could be many explanations, and like I say, you could even, you play for the matrix when you allow yourself to become possessed, as I have. The minute you become negative and possessed and do something that you really don't want to, or that you shouldn't, and you appear to have no control over it, it is possession, because it really isn't you. But this is the battle. This is part of the World War III that is waged in the matrix. Even though I don't fully understand it all, but like I say, I have it in my own reality. So I don't have to have that infrared. I would like to have that infrared or that camera to where I could really see it. Although it might be too frightening for me too, because sometimes you can be aware of something, but if you don't see it visually, it's not as frightening. But at the same time, most of the time you will not know how to deal with it either. You are literally shadow boxing. That's a saying. I think it's a sport. These things, I'm not overly into them, but where you're boxing, shadow boxing means you're punching air. You're not really hitting. You're not really hitting a target. You're not really fighting another human being. And in this reality, we are like that in a funny kind of way, because if you don't know what your reality is, you can't counter the negative forces, because you are shadow boxing, you're punching air, you don't know where the negative force even is. Most of the time I don't. And by the time you do, it's already hit you. But that is because we're not at the full capacity. But like I've said, and I'm going to go off the track here again, the human being is the centre of the reality and controls the frequency and vibration of the reality. This earth matrix, this earth, if you like, we're in it, but we're surrounded also by a technological matrix that is affecting the frequency and that operates and manoeuvres the human mind to where the reality is able to be made negative, able to be made to where to where the matrix has the ability to penetrate the reality and make the reality negative. Now, I didn't put that right. No, the matrix, if the human being can be maneuvered, played by the matrix like I am, as you can see right now, even making the video is a strain. Yeah, even making the video is a strain. And you're making the video as much for the matrix as for the few real human beings. The only reason I make the videos, I wouldn't make this video right now if I knew the reality that it is going to the matrix and those that are of the matrix, as opposed to going to a few real human beings. And that is the reality. The video goes more to the matrix than to human beings, because the human beings, I only have a small number of real human beings that watch, whereas the matrix is vast. That's the reality, so I shouldn't be making the video. And if I knew that that was the whole real reality, I wouldn't make one, even though I would say it's unfortunate for the few real human beings that might like it for whatever reason. But common sense would tell me that it's not worth it, because you would then be defeating those real human beings too. I've gone over the place and convoluted, as you can see again. But I know the reality is that, yes, of course the video goes to the matrix and would benefit the matrix more than a few real human beings. But I say to myself, it doesn't matter now, because we're towards the end of a World War III, as I put it. The matrix doesn't need to use this technological device that I'm using to get from me. It has advanced technology that it already gets my thinking before I put it onto the video. So the video matters not. So I would think that I don't have to say I shouldn't make a video. Because it's like the matrix just laughs at me making the video anyway. Because it's like, we already knew what you were going to say before you said it. Our only aim, though, is we'd like to muddle you up a little bit while you're making it, so that at least only a small number of people will watch it, because we are the matrix and we really like to keep it to where the vast majority of anyone that's saying anything at all, even if it's only saying, hello, how are you, if it has any sort of human, genuine vibration connotation connected to it, the matrix is not keen on that. The matrix doesn't want direct human vibration frequency in its reality. It needs and has to have the human at its centre, its source of power, because it's a frequency matrix and the human being is frequency. The matrix is not frequency. The matrix is technology. I don't know if this makes any sense, and I'm not sure if it makes sense even to me, but there's a difference, and I'm just putting it in a basic way so that I can understand it myself, even though I really don't, and so that it might kind of make a kind of basic sense. Because there's many more things operating in this matrix. On the other hand, it could be simple, like I'm putting it. It could be, it's only complicated because I can't see it. because I don't have the infrared camera that I should have. It's there, but it's been closed down. Everything in the human being has been closed down because we're now just the source of frequency for the matrix. Frequency, vibration, and energy for the matrix to create a reality, whatever reality they want. We don't create for ourselves, we create for them. Indirectly, unconsciously, unknowingly, unwittingly. We serve the matrix. Many serve it directly because once you believe in that reality, so if you believe in that reality and you believe in that reality and you think that reality is good and you think that reality benefits you, especially if it's at a material level, because the matrix is material, because the human being's thinking creates a material reality which we live in and then play in. And we start to like that. In fact, most of us like it too much. Even though it's negative, we still like that physical reality because it's all we know, because we're kept from anything else. And we are here in this limbo kind of reality anyway. I say limbo because it is kind of like, because there is that free will, it's hard to explain. And I haven't fully grasped it myself yet because I'm a player like you and everyone else. And hopefully the less you're playing, the more you'll realise. But, some of us are forced to play. Like I always say, I'm forced to play. I'm aware that I'm playing in a matrix reality. I don't want to play. I don't like sport. But the matrix, because I am not at high frequency, the matrix can force its physical reality onto me because I've opened that gate. Because I think that if you can get to where you are more yourself, in yourself and your frequency and your vibration, you have it under your control and you are vibrating frequency higher, you're more content. You're an entity in yourself. The matrix is outside of you in a funny kind of way. You're in this world, but the matrix is not going. You don't care for the matrix. You're not going to let it affect you. It's there, but you can almost laugh at it and ignore it. That's how you should be. But in reality, like myself, because the matrix knows this, it keeps you at that physical level and at that fear level, at that insecurity level. You're not feeling content in yourself. You feel the world is, the matrix is controlling you. You feel the real world is closing in on you. And the more that happens, the more the matrix can come in. Because at low frequency, the matrix can use its technology. The matrix can use, it can use even human beings that are at low frequency. I've lost myself here. I think I'll have to fold off the video. I've gone into fairyland, but even the fairyland is starting to not make sense to even me, even though I'm making the fairy tale. I like to at least say I'm saying a fairy tale. I'm saying reality is a bit of a fairy tale, but hey, I'm going to make it up and try to make it sense in this positive negative kind of battle that's going on. That's putting it very simple. It's a good versus bad. It's a positive versus negative. And even that will depend on how you view what is positive or what is negative or what is good or bad. That is also the mind game of the matrix. Like you would probably say, well, surely we would know what is positive and what is negative. Surely we should know what is good or bad for us. For us, that's another thing too. It should be like for us, for a human being, for yourself. No point in saying it's good or it's bad or it's positive or it's negative if you're living in the matrix. Because their idea of positive and negative and good and bad, we live in a reverse world. They want it all the other way around. They want you to think that what is positive is really negative and what is negative is positive. Because that's the convoluted matrix. Because then you will be living very low frequency. Then you will represent the God entity as most do. Like the psychopath and the narcissist, they represent the mindset and the state of being and the frequency and the vibration of the God entity and its disciples, its minions, its followers, its servants, its advocates, whatever word you want to use, the vast majority. And even the psychopath that may not even have a religious or bone in its body. It doesn't matter, because the minute you are at that frame of thinking, at that frequency, at that level of emotion or lack of emotion towards what you know or should know is positive or negative. Am I putting this right or not? Or am I losing myself here totally? Because I feel that I am. But that's the matrix, you see. It doesn't want you to know what you should basically. That's why I say the matrix has got lower frequency, darker, because, I in my own vague memory recollection, if even that is, true. And I would think that there is some sort of continuum, even if reality changes. I would think, but I don't know that, because, like I say, I don't understand these things, because we are in a mind game. We're in a physical game that is largely controlled, though, by the mind. Our minds are controlled by the matrix, so therefore the physical reality then becomes that which our almost like a projection of our mind in a way, because if you're at a higher frequency, you're not going to be bothered even by the negative, but you're also going to see it and understand it. Whereas, see, once again, I've got convoluted, but I would think that a lot of people, and I could be wrong about this, are now seeing what is negative as positive. So they're convoluted that way. So they're not actually consciously even able to discern, even in their reality now, what is negative. Whereas a few years ago, more than a few years ago, but say 30, 40, whatever, 50, people would have at least known, or at least had a kind of basic idea of what was positive and negative. But our perception now, even in this reality, to where we are accepting the more negative, the more dark, if you follow me, I would say that that's how reality has changed. And that's why I say that it is a mind game, because I know myself, and I could use so many examples of my own past on this. And, where you just don't see something that is negative really for a spiritual human being, but you don't see it as negative. You may even think it's positive, or you may even think, hey, it doesn't matter, it's okay. That's generally, I think, how we tend to be. We just tend to think that it doesn't matter that much most of the time. I'd say that's my case. I'd say, hey, I don't really agree with some of the advances that they've done in the last, say, 20, 30 years. I might say, it has got a bit artificial. Even I've said that before I became very firm against technology, because I realised that it controls the reality. But even when I didn't think it controlled, and I thought that even human beings at least do control the technology, I still thought, sure, I could even use some of those things myself. Sure, that even at a medical level, say, it might be, why shouldn't you change this or that if science says they can? That sort of thing. Why shouldn't you? And I sort of thought, I thought to myself, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I change something if science allows it and science gives you the means to do so? And you say, if everyone else is doing it, they'll be ahead of you. They'll use things, so why not? You know what I mean? That's the same with technology. It's like everything. We sort of say, why not then? But even like for some of us, we might say, it's a bit like, I could use examples, but like you see, and it's a reality now. It's like, why shouldn't you change your physical demeanour, enhance it? Like particularly if the Matrix tells you that something is beautiful, like why shouldn't I have long blonde hair? My mind tells me that I'm a long-haired, blonde, beautiful woman, okay? And the Matrix says, yeah, we can give you that. We can give you anything you want, even physically, if it makes you happy. Of course, they won't tell you that the Matrix has given me that mindset. In my case, it could go back to my Lulu Archon spirit doll, or non-spirit doll, really. But she did have big blue eyes and blonde hair. Would I have liked Lulu as much if she had purple hair or pink hair or black hair or some other colour, or orange hair, or would I have liked her if she had had a different facial expression? I would say no. I would say the Matrix conditioned me from a young age to like certain things. And because I was non-spiritual and more physical as whatever, even though I did see a spirit in that. So that's the trick of the Matrix too, because, I've gone off on, I really will have to close the video. I do not know what I'm talking about now. I honestly have to look into the camera, this technological device, and say, I'm very sorry if anyone's listening, because I really don't know what I'm talking about. I've tried to make a point. I'll try to get back onto it if I can, and then I'll have to fold up. Yeah, all I'm saying is that even regardless of, at a physical level, right? Okay, so I want to have the blonde hair. I want to have, I want to have physical characteristics that appeal to me. And I'm like, well, I don't have those. So science says they can let me have those things now, which they definitely can. How far it really is and whatever, goodness knows. We already know that in our reality, and it is acceptable now. It wasn't as acceptable. Everything is about you accepting the artificial, really, if you want to look at it that way. I think that's what I say, and we do. Because, you see, I always said, hey, well, what is wrong with admiring? There shouldn't be anything wrong with admiring something that you consider to be pretty. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that. And you might even say, well, maybe if something's pretty, it's got a pretty mind. Maybe if something's pretty, it's like my Archon spirit doll. It becomes a spirit. You start to stretch things, is what I'm saying. You start to relate certain things. That's a justification. That's my justification for liking something artificial, and for then saying it's okay to bring it into my reality. It's okay to make something that really is probably from a negative source into something positive. You know what I mean? And, it's it's like an old Twilight episode that I only saw a little while back, even though we did watch them when we were younger, where everyone can look beautiful. But everyone ended up looking all beautiful. Everyone had the blonde hair and the blue eyes or whatever they wanted. Everyone looked nice, but everyone looked the same. You see, that's the enticement, but also the danger, if you want to look at it that way. Like, do you want a world where, yes, everyone looks beautiful, but basically everyone looks the same? You lose the individuality. You lose the uniqueness. But even that in this reality will be twisted around too, because we do have this idea that, yes, you can be unique and you can be individual, but there will be negative connotations attached to that too. So everything is definitely a trick. Immediately when I even said that, I realised that in the reality, yes, we still have the individuality. And in fact, that is almost emphasised now. You have to be yourself. You have to be whatever you want to be. You can be whatever you want to be. You can change yourself. That's right, you can. You can use science, you can use surgery, you can use, anything that this world now offers you. You can use it, and you can use it freely because it's acceptable, because we no longer, like years ago when I used to look at some of my movie stars, I liked to think that they were natural. I didn't like to think that they, were a contrivance of Hollywood or of the Matrix, because the Matrix is Hollywood and Hollywood is the Matrix. It has to be, because it's it's a product of the Matrix. It makes the individuals that serve the Matrix that then influence us and that we like and that are the disciples of the Matrix. It has to be that way. That's how it actually is. Everything is of the Matrix. Everything is of the earth, of this world. And certain individuals, if you like, beings, if you like, depends on how far you want to stretch it, control everything that is on the earth, every institution, every company, every industry. Hollywood's an industry. It's an industry. They just call it Hollywood, but it's an industry. It's a movie industry, but I used to often think, I like to think that my movie stars, my favourites, were reasonably natural, that they were just lucky, that they were just a real little human being like me that just, were just lucky enough to fall into, and I would probably wonder about the luck now so much even. That's right, that's the Matrix. They're lucky to fell into Hollywood and become rich and famous, etc., and we think they're great, and I've idolised them for a lifetime. But you kind of don't like to think or accept that they're totally manufactured. You don't like to think that everything about them, that they are part of the Matrix, and that everything about them is kind of staged, even though they're in movies, and movies are only a film version of the stage, where you knew you were watching a stage play. And you knew that the actors were all glamorised up and covered in makeup and had all the fancy costumes and spoke words that they didn't believe, that were written for them. That's how it works, But that is the big reality too, in the Matrix and in Hollywood, but you do tend to like to think that they. All I'm saying is that we're now conditioned to accept more and more artificial, whereas even when I was younger, I didn't know that Hollywood was the Matrix. I didn't know there was a Matrix. But I knew that some stars were a little bit more artificial than others, in the sense that maybe they wore more makeup, maybe some might have had a bit of surgery, but generally you thought they were just natural, real human beings that, who had sought that out and had been lucky enough to be given a part in a movie or something like this. And you tended to think that they were not that much different to yourself in a way. And and even then I used to think, when I heard that some, went to a bit of extremes for their physical persona, and now it's like commonplace. In fact, it's commonplace amongst normal people, to use science to keep themselves a bit younger looking, all this sort of stuff, and to make themselves a bit more beautiful, shall we say, depending on what you think your idea of beauty is. That also is usually of the Matrix. You get conditioned a certain way. I'm not sure if the human brain naturally does tend to like certain things more than others. I always thought that was the case in my case, but it's probably not. It's probably all the Matrix. But, old habits die hard, and, but what I am saying is that even so, I did think, when I compare now to, say, the 40s movie stars, or I would sort of say I assumed they were more natural. Of course, they probably weren't, because the Matrix has been around longer than film. It's just that, like I say, the Matrix operates mainly behind the scenes, whereas now it's come a little bit more to the front. Because if you accept the Matrix or accept more technology, accept more things being artificial, then the Matrix is happy with that, and then it will bring it into your reality. But it will only bring it in when you're prepared to accept it. That's that little bit of free will that we talked about earlier on, even though I'm sure that I, as usual, have gone way off that kind of remote free will that we have. But yeah, we do accept a lot more now, as we accept artificial as being almost natural now, is what I'm saying. Whereas a few years back I would have said, oh yeah, I wouldn't like my movie stars to be quite as false as what they appear to be now, even though they don't actually look any better. I wouldn't think, but they openly will reasonably openly disclose if they've changed something to make themselves prettier or something, or whatever their purpose is, whatever look they want to achieve, Whereas in the past, they did some of those same things, but they would not have openly exposed it to you or me, because it was not accepted then. You had to be under the delusion that they were a natural, normal human being, not that different to yourself, but just happened to be a little bit prettier perhaps, and a little bit more lucky, and supposedly with a little bit more talent, which I, as you know now, I do not think that is the case. Everything is from a real human being. Most of movie stars and things are of the Matrix. They are not really real human beings in a true sense. They do not express themselves openly in any way. They do not have real feelings that they express openly in any real way. Everything is designed and operated so that you buy into them, so that you believe their illusion, so that you believe what they say, what their feelings appear to be. Those feelings are your feelings, not theirs. They don't have them. They are playing you. They are there to play you. Some would say they're there to entertain you. No, they're there to play you, because they're of the Matrix. Even if they just entertain you and you can separate a bit from it, they're still buying your attention, your time, your admiration, your interest, whatever, while you're watching. And that's just the reality of it. And I'll close off the video and go and watch a movie, and that is the reality. I consciously know what I'm doing, but do I? Should I not be doing something else? I'm being played. I know I'm being played, but I'm still allowing myself to be played. Because I say to myself, well, if I go outside, then I'm confronted with the physical, real reality that is also the Matrix, and that is more disturbing than the technological Matrix that's on the TV. I don't think I'm making any sense here, but it's all the Matrix. It's all reality. It's just that one appears to be safer than the other, as I say. It appears to be safer to watch something negative on the television or in a movie, as opposed to going outside and seeing it in reality. That's more disturbing, because you think that they're not the same. But, well, of course, they are and they aren't. Oh, they are and they aren't. What am I talking about here? Everything is of the Matrix. It's just that you think one is real and one isn't. They're all real. The Matrix is real. It's just that it's not meant to be real for us. We're not meant to... we're meant to change it. We're meant to not play in it. We're meant to, see what is positive and negative and avoid it, And also we're meant to be combined with other real human beings, but instead we're combined with the matrix. So our ability to make the matrix more positive is even more limited, you see. If I want to go into fairyland, I would probably say, and I think I've said this before, we're in this World War III now, if you want to look at it that way. It's a tug-of-war battle. But, on one side you have real human beings who are in a smaller number, but they are also not connected. They are connected to the technological matrix system, mind control, machine system, if you like to look at it that way. Whichever way you want to look at it, even if you don't think the technology is as advanced as what I might think it is. You might only see some of the technology, but even if you only see limited technology, even if you see human beings operating together and they are working against you, that is still the matrix. You know what I mean? Everything that comes negative against a real human being is from the matrix, whether it be from the humans that are possessed and operating for the matrix, whether it be counterfeit human beings that are really disciples for the matrix. In other words, it'd be a bit like if you went to like I say, it's just as simple as if you fall in love with someone that doesn't really like you. And that can apply to every situation in your life. That could apply to every thing you do in your life, every situation you go into, every community thing you do, everything you like, everything you believe in. It could be that you're dealing with people who are working against you. You're not to know this. You're not to know if they're real the way that you think they are. Because their beliefs could be different. Because, like I say, the Matrix is it is like Hollywood. It is very false. It's very glamour on the surface, hiding a negative underground kind of that you can't see. It's like that. It's like if I worship my favourite Hollywood star and they present themselves a certain way and I like the roles they play, I like their demeanour. But when they go home and they're not making the movie or they're not on film, they're a completely different character. The complete opposite to what I would normally watch or like, shall we say. Would I watch my favourite movie star if I knew they were a knife-wielding psychopath? That goes around of a night time killing people, killing animals, and then comes sweet into a movie and pretends to be this kind love. No, I wouldn't touch him. I wouldn't go near it. Well, it's kind of like that's the reality we live in. Everything is quite, it's a reverse reality. See, once you accept that, you have to say everything. If you accept that it's a reverse reality and you actually see that it's a reverse reality, once you can actually justify that to yourself by proving it, shall we say. Like if you say, well, look, yes, these situations do happen to me. I've seen it in my own existence and I see it a lot. Then it is very easy for you to at some point to say, yeah, well, maybe it is a total reverse world, because you will see it in the bigger picture as well. If you look, you will eventually see it. If you really delve enough, you'll see it at a superficial level, even in the bigger picture. But it just depends on how far you want to stretch your imagination. And I say imagination, but I say the imagination, it's real. If you believe that things really happen and you've got to the bottom of you've done your detective work, shall we say, and you've got to the bottom of this mystery thriller, you've found the culprit, You found the murderer, you found the deception, you found the deceivers. If you really have done that and you're thoroughly convinced you've investigated 100% and you proved it, then then you have to say, yes, it was a reverse reality because I did not see that. I thought it was different to what it was. I thought the villain was the hero, and I thought the hero was the villain. You see? Like that. But you found that out. You realise that the people around you, those that you thought were the ones, your friends, were not really the ones you should have been associating with, but the ones that you belittled and thought were less. They were the real human beings. They were the ones that would have benefited you the most. They might not have been as movie star quality. That's right. They might not have been as enticing. They might not have been as impressive. They might not have a string of credentials. They may not have a string of, movies and talents and all the accolades that we give to everyone that we look for. They might have been a lot more simple person that didn't appear to have much. But boy, did I make a mistake, and boy, will a lot of people, because that simple, real human being at least will not do you any harm. Whereas to worship or to idolise or to follow and believe the false movie stars type of thing, it won't get you anywhere. You say, well, it's harmless to watch a movie. Yeah, but you can do that in reality too. That's what I'm saying. This world is a reverse world 100%. So you're not just being fooled by where you might be consciously aware that, yes, if you like a movie star, it is a little bit fake. They probably aren't exactly the same as in the movie roles. They might say things to appease their public, to make themselves more human and more adorable in their interviews and things like that. You kind of accept that. But you don't sort of then think that in your own reality you're dealing with psychopathic types of people who are just exactly that way. They exactly put on a total front. They're not giving you their real, true self. They hide that. They camouflage it. And you buy into the camouflage, into the facade, because what else can you do? If you can only go on what people say and do until you find out different. Usually by then you're in the thick of it, like in the Matrix. You find out the truth about even people when you've already been involved, when they've already done their damage, or when you're already emotionally involved, shall we say, whatever. I don't understand these things 100%, but you kind of follow how that can happen. It's a bit like if you've got family. You've got a mother and father. Like the old saying, you can't choose your relatives. You're born with them, you're stuck with them. So if they're not positive for you, you're going to want to see the positive in them because they're your blood, because they're, you have to love them. You have to, and they'll be in your life. That's where you don't even have a choice. And a lot of things we don't even have a choice, but you can still make incredibly wrong choices too. No doubt that will come down to the fact that if you're always surrounded by negative people, it won't take much for someone else to look like as though they're pretty good if they've even got a little bit of shine to them, shall we say. And then you're conditioned by the Matrix to be impressed by the wrong things. That's so true. You don't, you got the choice of two people, and one says, I'm a famous movie star, or I'm a brilliant scientist. I've got all these credentials, I've got all this status, I've got all this money. I have all this influence. I'm powerful. I'm important in the Matrix. And you see another person, like I say, the homeless person sitting on the bench. You're not going to, who are you going to want to associate it with given a choice? Obviously, most of us don't have those extreme choices, but in lesser extreme cases, we still have choices. But we rarely will sit and get involved with the homeless person. Rarely. And I'm going to emphasise this enough because I believe this now. I may not have practiced it in my life No, definitely not. But, sure, you could talk to the scientist, you could talk to the movie star, you could talk to even a person who's got more credentials, more status, appears to have more knowledge, appears to be more worldly. You could talk to that person and find them interesting. They could beguile you, just like I'm doing now, or trying to do with my conversation, trying to impress, trying to say, oh, I'm very knowledgeable, I have great information, I can tell you about the universe, I can tell you about all this stuff and rubbish or whatever, and you'll be impressed. Well, you sit next to the homeless man and he'll probably say, have you got $1 so I can get a coffee or something? And, you won't know that you are in the elite company when you're sitting next to the homeless man, because it's a real human being. You will want to be impressed with the matrix operators, the matrix beings, the matrix human beings that will always appear to have more to give you. Yes. And that's why I say you shouldn't be a follower of anyone. If you're a real human being, you shouldn't even be a follower of someone who speaks the truth, because you don't know if it's of the matrix or if it's a real human being. But you shouldn't, if you are of the truth, you don't need to follow even another human being that knows the same truth. You can associate with them, and that's right. You should associate with the real human being, the homeless man on the thing, if he's a real human being. And in my reverse world, I'm just going to stretch this right to the limit like I've done before. In this real world, if you are the homeless man sitting on the thing, you probably are a real human being, because it's a reverse world. So in a reverse world, it has to be that those that are at the bottom should be at the top, and those who are at the top should be at the bottom. Does that make sense? It has to, doesn't it? That's if, of course, if you believe that it's a reverse world, but everything else in this world is reverse. So I say, if almost everything is, I just say, hey, it's everything, because it's now a full matrix. So I don't think there are that many exceptions. There could be. Of course there could be. And of course I can't pick it anyway. Because most of us are kind of stuck in the centre. They're the extremes, so it's a lot easier if you're talking about extremes, but most of us are kind of shoved into the centre. In other words, most of us are not the most powerful person in the world, but we might also not be sitting in the gut of the homeless person. Or, you know what I mean? And so that's usually the world that a lot of people are living in. So then it is very hard to distinguish, between the matrix and the real. And really, I would say, finishing up here, which this video is not even supposed to go out, but I put so much energy into it, it may well, even though I'm sure it makes very little sense. But I'm going to say on my closing thing, if I can keep my thoughts clear before the matrix takes my thought with some distraction, even though actually it's relatively quiet for this actual, here, which is unusual. There is the matrix and there is a real human being. Okay, I'm going to put it bottom line. There's nothing else. And I'm going to put it bottom line. There is only one important thing, and that is a real human being. Everything else should be non-existent, really. Everything else is the matrix, one way or another. I don't understand it, but yeah. But the only really valuable thing, the only really important thing, is that simple homeless man being sitting on the bench, the real human being. But in our matrix reality, that looks as though it's the least important, not of any relevance. But in reality, The real human being, a real human being, a spiritual human being, okay? Because that's what is the only thing. But this reality tells you different and is not conducive to the real human being and will be negative to the real human being, is a negative force against the real human being to keep the real human being, which is the source of the reality in a way, because it's their frequency, their thinking and stuff that really powers the whole thing in a way. But it is not a human being's reality, despite what they think, unfortunately, sadly, depressingly. But but like I say, it's easy for me to say it because I see it full on. So if you don't see it full on, it will be still a mind game. You will still be in that battle. Well, I'm in that battle anyway, but what I'm saying is that you won't be aware you're in the battle and you will be taken over by the matrix. You will end up working for the matrix. You will end up keeping the matrix going at full steam. But if you're a real human being, it probably won't be in your best interest in the long run because the matrix is not designed to benefit human beings. Human beings are in the matrix to benefit the matrix now. Why this is, like I say, I think it's a type of limbo type of situation. That's how if I actually tried to stretch my mind, I would say that it has to be a real, it's almost like, spirituality and human beings being put on the line. I certainly feel that. And you do feel that you're losing, I've not been aware of being a spiritual person. And now you find that you are representing that almost. And you have to, because there are so few, you see, because most have been taken over by the matrix. That's how I see it, because I see most people as not really, because of even their beliefs, because they do now think that it is okay for something negative to almost be a positive. Because, like I say, they didn't, not like 40 or 50 years ago where you had more clear guidelines as to what was positive or negative, or good or bad, shall we say. Now we've blurred that whole thing. Now some people will say, well, that's a more free society. Well, look, it is a more free society. But it's a more free society to be negative, really, if you want to look at it that way. And that's because the matrix likes negativity, you see. You see, that you're allowed to be free to be negative, but you're not allowed to be free to be positive. That's how I come to my conclusion of the matrix, because I wasn't a very positive person, but I wasn't negative enough for the matrix, I don't think. Like I say, the few little positive things that I did in amongst a life of mainly being a negative matrix operator, that's why I say it hangs a bit in the balance, because I only looked at my own reality in a way to kind of come to this view, shall we say, acceptance of a negative reality. I had to, I was forced to, but I still had to figure it out. Because I really just thought I was in a nightmare. I didn't wake up, I was woken up deliberately. The matrix woke me up. Because it's like, hey, it's hanging by a thread. But, you are verging on going into the positive. And because our matrix is now hanging by a thread, every person seems to count a fair bit. Or maybe it's, obviously it depends on, like I've said before, there are lots of reasons. Sometimes it is just, a question of opportunity, they wait for people to get into certain circumstances. The Matrix will set up circumstances, and then when it set you up into certain circumstances to where it can then manipulate you more or put negativity more, it may take them years to do that, because the Matrix is still operated at a funny kind of real level as well. It still has certain rules in the way it's played, and it still operates at a physical level, even though it's essentially a mind game and it's not really as real as what we think. I don't think I'm explaining this, but it still has to use humans at a physical level, even real humans, to set up situations in this fake physical reality. It's fake because it's all contrived. It's fake because it is set up, and it's fake because, it's fake to a real human because they don't know that everything around them is being set up and is being staged. They don't realise that they don't realise that everyone in this Earth matrix, this Earth matrix or this Earth world, whatever you want, doesn't matter, even if whatever you want to think of it even. They just don't realise that everyone is not an individual. Everyone is not a separate real human being like I thought I was. Everyone is not like me, just operating singularly. Most people are operating in a joint collective kind of manner. You'd say, well, of course, some people have friends, they have family, they might go to a club or something. I've said this before, but that's not really quite it. I'm saying that all those things are actually of the Matrix. So therefore, those joint clubs, if you like, even if you're a member of a club, it can be manipulated by the Matrix. As in a joint effort sometimes. It's all about putting out the right ideas to human beings, I suppose. It's to get human beings to act a certain way, you have to tell them a good story. But unlike me, you're not going to say this is a fairy tale when it is. You're going to say this is the truth. This is a serious situation. You must, as a joint collective, do this or that to save your reality, to save your community, to save the situation. It's a matrix. So everything is about directing you along certain lines. I don't think I've made any sense. I'll have to fold up. And I lost my train of thought there, and I lost what I was saying. Oh, dear. It's frustrating. See, if you are an individual human being, even if you're not a spiritual human being, it's frustrating to realise that you're in a matrix. But if you are a real human being, then you really are a spiritual human being because you have that, that kind of mind, shall we say, to where you should know what is positive and negative. I'll put it simply. That's a spiritual human being. If you don't know the difference between positive and negative, or what's good and bad for you or for your world, or if you lose that kind of ability to see that, or that discernment, if you like, these days they'd say it's discrimination, but it's really just a discernment. It's like saying that person is a benefit to me, that person will bring out the best in me, I will associate with that person. You're only as good as the company you keep. It's the same with the matrix. We're in the matrix, so we're keeping bad company because the matrix is all negative company, if you want to look at it that way. Didn't put that very well. That's putting it in a simple way, but at the same time, when you're dealing with a bigger picture, it's not simple. But it is still, at a spiritual kind of level, still dark versus light, positive versus negative, and even in saying this, I've said this before, you talk about a spiritual level, a positive and a negative. In the matrix, spirituality itself will be used for the matrix, because we're dealing with entity here, entities, beings that are at a different level to us. Because whereas I'm seeing things simple, they see it as simple too, but they know that spiritual beings also must be part of the matrix. In fact, their whole goal is to keep spiritual human beings in the matrix, keep them playing in the matrix. If they think they're losing you spiritually, then they will come down negative in a physical manner, because that will be a last resort. There will be last resorts, you see. They're, like I say, the matrix could be hanging by a thread, so they will do things that they don't normally do sometimes if they think they're losing it. Because a bit like myself, you get to the point where you say, I've had this, it's just too far gone, I don't care, I'll take a chance, and like I say, they don't like that situation. They prefer to have the situation under control. But, because we are spiritual beings, and sometimes act spiritual even if we're not aware we're spiritual beings. The matrix sees this. And any spirituality has to be part of the matrix. But that will be where the God entity, you're in connection with that. Because you could be a spiritual being, but you could still be, like I'm sure that many of the disciples of the matrix actually think they are spiritual beings. But they're spiritual beings for the matrix because they believe in the God entity. They think that this world is all there is, and they like this world, and they benefit from it. So therefore, why would they not worship the God of the matrix? If you look at it that way, that's another way of looking at it, I suppose. If you believe in the matrix and if you believe in all this fairy tale, then, it's a bit like if you're in the land of, if you're Alice in Wonderland, if you're in a certain kingdom, shall we say, or a certain land or a certain country, whatever you like, you're going to pick your king or queen. But probably it will already be there, so it will be picked for you. But you will go along with that king or queen because that is your country, that is your kingdom, and you tend to then adopt those beliefs and think that if there are benefits by being in that kingdom, if that king and queen give you certain benefits, even though it's really only throwing you peanuts, but you will like peanuts, so you'll pick them up. You won't say, oh, well, I'm meant to have more than peanuts. You'll settle for peanuts. You might think peanuts are great. In other words, you will think that's all there is, and you will be grateful, and you will worship your king or your queen, as we've done in the past. I used to sing God Save the Queen when I was a kid. I thought, what harm is that? That's nice. You just, that's the matrix, you see. You go along with things and you, but also, and I'll have to leave this for another video, because naturally I'm not sure, and naturally, or unnaturally, as the case may be, I should know these things, but I don't. But naturally there is more to this matrix than just the human being versus human beings that are of the matrix. And why would some be more of the matrix and some not of the matrix, or at least not mentally wanting to be of the matrix, despite the fact that we are trapped in a matrix? Because we are trapped in a matrix at a physical level and at a mental level. This depends on each person, of course. Some people, at a physical level, you're definitely trapped. But if you are not trapped as much at a mental or a psychological level, well, then the physical will not be as strong and it won't bother you as much. You won't care that you're in a matrix prison earth because it will be vast enough for you. You won't see it as a trap or as a prison. It is, of course, because it's closed in anyway, so either way you can't get out, while you're here. That's just reality, isn't it? We all know that, We can't leave the earth. Even if you don't believe in anything at all, you can't leave the earth. Some people might say, well, you can get in a plane and fly, that's leaving the ground part of the earth. But you can't leave past a certain distance either way, can you? And as it's a matrix, and a lot of it is all about information and mind games, as I've said, which I've now accepted, even though, I used to think, there's this, that, and everything. I always felt uneasy about it, strangely enough. I've always felt rather uneasy about the idea of all this vast universes and planets and everything. I always felt but that, of course, is the idea too, because it really then makes you are not important in the matrix at all then. So you feel like you do feel, and that is a mindset, but that is the mindset that's been given to you by the matrix. And then you feel lonely and powerless. And that's definitely been my case. I've often felt that over a thing. I've thought this, like I said before, I mentioned that time many a time when I used to look out over the night sky and you'd see all these what would almost look like 1,000,000 lights of the house lights, if you were in some parts, where you could look over and you could see a real lot. And it really it didn't make you feel comfortable. It's like, oh, wow, I'm just a little speck. Well, I think, as I've said before, human beings are little specks of sand, but, they're a little bit more important than what they think, even as little individual specks of sand. That's only when you realise that there's a matrix, and when you see that the matrix likes to keep the specks of sand in their place, doesn't want the specks of sand moving too much, doesn't want the specks of sand causing too many ripples on the water or causing any problems. In the sense that a matrix is a world, like it or not. If you like it, as many do, you don't care that it's a negative matrix. You don't care that it is doesn't want any vast changes. And human beings, we've all been conditioned to be frightened to change. I certainly have been like that in my life. Sometimes I would settle for things being very limited and even dull, knowing that you, as a human and your human experience, that you should be experiencing more. And even knowing that sometimes that you could do something quite simple that might make you feel better. But, fear sets in and the matrix keeps you very limited that way. And you won't take a chance. You say, I know I should leave this negative situation. It's a bit negative, but it's also got some comforts. The matrix likes you to feel comfortable. And you get fearful of that, of taking a chance, that you might lose the few benefits you have by taking a chance away from the matrix to where you could have more. But the matrix fills you with fear to where like myself in my life, I always focused more on what I could lose rather than to what I could gain by taking a chance, by, moving away from some situations, like even now where I am, I'm stuck here. But I'm not really stuck, but I'm stuck by my own mind in a way, because I see it as very negative. But I still say, oh, well, I'll have to do this or that to go somewhere else. And where can I go? Where will be better? Then maybe I will have less money, so maybe I might not be able to get the things that I need. You put all these physical considerations, which are of the matrix, and they are a reality of your life while you're here. This is true. And so, so it is a tough thing to 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 actually rise to being a spiritual human being, if you want to look at it that way. It's I didn't put that very well. I have to close off. I'm losing patience with myself because I'm frustrated and not making much sense here. So I will close off, but I may or may not send it out. But I expend so much energy even on a negative video that I usually send it out, because I think there might be, I did make maybe 1 or 2 points that I thought made a bit of sense, and it's only that I think that there are some people that must have, what is it, the patience of Job, I think there's a saying. Because quite frankly, we don't live in a patient world, and yet to listen to a video, because usually you're wanting to get some sort of information. That's right, you are. I know this myself. So it is to listen to people ramble and just go on taking ages to make some point and then losing it half the time anyway. It does show that maybe that, I would say that anyone who even listens to my stuff, it would have to be where you'd have to be a spiritual human being to have that patience, I would imagine, because I know the matrix is very much about getting quick information, technology. It's not about sitting and relaxing and just having a conversation, a free thought, to where you could perhaps see things in a casual way and almost enjoy getting the information. It's not about that at all. It really isn't. And even I'm not about that. But I recognise that that's not what I want to be, and not what I should be, and not what I would have even been even a few years back. But it is very much like that. And, I'm going to get enlightened, so I better click onto as many videos and just get a little bit out and then cut it off. Everything's about... And it's almost like, then I'll be super smart, then I'll be super enlightened, then I'll be super spiritual, and maybe you are meant to do that, I don't know, but it seems something a bit funny about it to me anyway, even though I do it myself. And maybe it's okay to do it if you already realise the matrix, and therefore you're not, we're not buying into our own lies, almost our own lie about ourselves and what we think we should be, because it's a tricky matrix. It's very tricky. It's very tricky. We trick ourselves even. I could be tricking myself now. I don't know if I've got the full gist of a lot of things. It's easy to be, you're dealing with, if you're dealing with a matrix and a matrix mind that already has so much information, knows so much about everything, and knows so much about you, knows your very mind, has taken over the minds of humans, and knows that every thought, and also has the whole library. They have the whole library of everything and anything that's been and has been for a long time, and knows what will fit with your way of thinking, even at a spiritual level. It's, what I'm saying? It's very, we really are in a mass confusion matrix that, that as, just as a single human being, if human beings really knew what they were up against, they would realise how important they are, because they would become conscious of the reality that there is so much being pushed against them. This is how I see the human being in the Matrix. I'll say, hey, well, I didn't think I was of any significance, and I didn't think that being a human being or spiritual or anything was really that big of a deal. But then when I look at when I become aware of the massive amount of negative stuff that is put against, that I become conscious of, and that I see being hurled at the human reality, shall we say, without sounding too fancy, that then shows me in a physical